Welcome everyone to today's episode of Let's Talk Adoption. We are so glad that you've clicked on to this episode and you are investing time learning more about adoption, modern adoption, and these honest conversations that we love to have here at the Let's Talk Adoption podcast. I'm Kim King. I'm here with Heather Featherston as well. Before we get started on today's episode, I want to remind you that you can communicate with us through our website at letstalkadoption.com. You are welcome to pitch us your show ideas, pitch us your guest ideas. If there is a book or something, a guest speaker that you think would be good for us to have on the podcast, just let us know. Likewise, if you have questions, comments, feedback about any of the episodes or just adoption in general, they are all welcome at letstalkadoption.com. And remember too, you can listen to every episode at letstalkadoption.com and you can also subscribe there. So be sure to do that so you never miss an episode. And the Let's Talk Adoption podcast is also shared on multiple different podcast platforms. Wherever you listen to your podcast, you should be able to tap in Let's Talk Adoption and find us. So Heather, we are here for today's episode, which is 3 questions women ask most when exploring adoption. And I love a conversation like this.
Absolutely. And I really like this because it is something that when you work in adoption, you hear all the time. And really, they're the questions we hear from women who are just starting to explore adoption for their child. These aren't questions we hear from women who have already made a decision, but really coming from a place that often may be scared, they may feel overwhelmed, definitely unsure about what modern adoption can look like for them. And they're really just trying to figure out what, this could be so they can make an educated decision, which, personally, I think it is so, so, so important that we talk about adoption more, not to push it onto people, but so that they do know and understand the full scope of modern adoption options as any woman considers her pregnancy choices. And honestly, Kim, I think most of the questions women ask are going to be emotionally based. Sometimes they're about logistics, but they're often that emotional aspect, trying to learn more about it from the emotional side. And they're often questions that are tied to guilt, to fear, to love, to, identity and to the future.
So today we wanted to take 3 of the most common questions women ask and really take time to dive fully into them. The time that we don't always have when we're just on the phone with someone. So that's what I love about podcasts, this in-depth, layered, nuanced conversation that we get to have, and just really the clarity that we get to provide to people, especially those who are researching and learning about adoption on their own online. The internet is a great tool, but you need to access the right resources that are going to have these honest conversations with you. And so I'm really excited to dive into some of these.
And if you're listening because adoption has crossed your mind, I think our hope is that this episode really feels safe. It feels informative, it feels compassionate, and that, you don't have to have everything figured out to reach out and learn more. And if you're an adoptive parent listening today, I think it always helps build empathy and compassion for the birth parents to learn more about things from their perspective. So kudos to you for listening. So the first question we're going to talk about, and this is one I cannot count the times I've heard it, but it is, if I choose adoption, doesn't that mean I don't love my baby? And I think this is probably one of the deepest fears women carry when they first contact us. And it obviously has to do with identity, what choosing adoption looks like for them.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of women equate the idea of parenting with love. So then when they think about adoption, which means they're not going to be parenting, they immediately feel so guilty. That guilt is so heavy on them. And they're, you know, even if they're unsure about parenting, they start questioning themselves as a mother, and many of them are already mothers as well, parenting other
Yep.
children.
Definitely. And so they look at it through that lens too. Well, I kept
Mhm.
these, but I'm thinking about placing that one. Does that look like I love that one less?
Mhm.
And I think society doesn't help in this whole equation either, because as you said, Kim, there's this idea that if you really love your baby, you will, I hate this word, you will keep it. You will automatically be able to parent it no matter what. But, you know, today's world, life is so much more complicated than that. It just isn't that cut and dry.
And we've spoken with women in any number of really complicated and hard situations and seasons in their life, facing homelessness, unstable relationships, addiction recovery, or actively not in recovery yet.
Hmm.
Many of the women we work with are coming to adoption because they want to choose a family for their child since they have not overcome or figured out the solution and how to manage their life while experiencing anxiety or other, mental health struggles, depression. They have lack of support. There could be a financial component. In fact, for many, they are facing instability financially as well, and simply feeling, emotionally unprepared, very much on their own, very much alone in the world, and the world seems like a dark, cold place to them. And many of them, in fact, I will say almost every one of those birth mothers or women who are considering adoption, they deeply love their child. And that's why this is so conflicting for them.
And I think that as society on the whole, we need to start understanding that when it comes to adoption, loving your child and being ready and prepared to parent, it, those are not the same things. Those those are not the same things at all. And I love what you said, Kim, that the women that we speak with about this, they deeply love their children. This an adoption decision has nothing to do with the love they feel for their child. In fact, if anything, it reflects a greater love, having to admit that they can't provide the life they want for their child right now. And that's a hard thing to admit.
And when I think about that, the term sacrificial love,
Hmm.
it's a
Hmm.
sacrificial love.
It is.
So it's not a lack of love, and it's just not just any ordinary love. It is a sacrificial love. She can love her baby completely and just really be honest with herself about the life that she wants her baby to have and her current circumstances. She's just not able to provide the life she wants her baby to have right now. She can't reconcile that. So that's
Hmm.
why she's leaning into learning more about adoption.
Hmm. And I think it's really important that we, speak very carefully when we're talking about these things because we don't want to oversimplify the adoption decision. One thing I often see people say when they're discussing adoption, sometimes when they're discussing abortion too, has to do with, well, if only women were given more money, then that would solve the problem. It wouldn't. That's an assumption that adoption is always rooted in financial crisis. And the truth of the matter is it isn't. And many of the women I've spoken to, um, money isn't playing a role in their adoption decision. It may be a part of it, but you know, I think if we've learned nothing in this country, it's that throwing money at problems doesn't fix them. A mom who's on her own and wants a two-parent family for her little boy, giving her money doesn't bring an involved dad into the picture. So again, I just think we need to not oversimplify any of these or turn them into, inspirational slogans. Adoption at its core is sacrificial, it's emotional. It also involves grief and loss, other, complicated feelings, but it can also provide so much.
Right. So when we think of the word love, we think of something beautiful that feels
Mhm,
amazing.
mhm.
We don't want to reduce the whole concept of adoption down to she loves her baby so much and this feels amazing for her because
Right.
it
It
doesn't feel
doesn't.
amazing. And I think we all understand that. So just hear us when we're saying this. We're talking about one component of the love that brings the specific kind of love that brings a woman to even consider adoption and create this adoption plan. But it's not without pain. There's a lot of
Mhm,
pain involved.
mhm. And I do think it's important that we see and reflect adoption as thoughtful and in most cases, women are making a very thoughtful decision that is coming from a place of great love for their child. And really, when they take that time, not just to learn about adoption, but also to consider what their child needs and contrast that with what their capacity is now to provide that. And also, you know, future focused. What where are we going? Are we able to get to the life we want our children to have? You know, that getting back to our initial question, that is not abandonment. That is not providing something for a child you don't love. If anything, it's the absolute opposite. It's choosing to feel that grief, live with that grief so that your child can have more.
Hmm. Yes, and many women wrestle with this question for weeks or even
Mhm,
months. I mean,
mhm,
there's a whole timeline going on in the hearts and minds of women all across our country who are discovering they are pregnant. They're extremely vulnerable in those moments of discovery and might even be a bit traumatized by that discovery. And her mind is just searching and searching for a solution. And when she lands on adoption as an option, we actually hear them ask us these questions such as, what kind of mother even thinks about adoption?
mhm,
Does this make me selfish? And will my baby hate me someday? And really, what it comes down to is the benefits of adoption have to outweigh all of those things, all of
mhm,
those fears, all of the unknowns, the trauma that she will go through, and the grief and the pain and the loss. And and it becomes bittersweet, right? It
mhm,
doesn't stay there. It becomes bittersweet. And also the impact to the child. A birth
mhm,
mother's heart is keenly in tune with the impact to her child. That's why it's hard on another level for her to feel like this is the best solution. She has to keep reconciling that at every point of the adoption process.
mhm, mhm. And she will keep asking herself those questions. And that's common. That's part of the
Mhm.
process. And I think it's really important we say this right up front here. Exploring adoption does not mean a woman has stopped loving her child or that she doesn't love her child. It usually means that she is thinking very deeply, um, spending time kind of looking inside herself too. Um, again, future focused. She's thinking about the future and the future she can provide. And many of these women are, I'm talking singular because many of them are on their own. They do not have a supportive partner in their pregnancy and or many times in the adoption process. And so that often plays a huge role in these decisions.
Yes, and I just want to speak to you directly if you are a woman that's thinking about this, that I wish I could just give you a hug right now and sit with you and assure you that learning about adoption does not come with any pressure to make a decision. There's not a time crunch on you. And what Heather is saying, I want to say directly to you that considering adoption or planning an adoption does not mean you don't love your baby.
Mm-hmm.
Parenting your baby doesn't mean you love your baby less. Your love is what it is. You have the heart of a mother that's trying to do what's best for your baby. And I just want to recognize that for you. If you want to explore adoption, you're not going to be on your own. You have a lot of choices you get to make, and there's a lot of support for you. And when you are having conversations, perhaps with an adoption professional, there's no pressure to decide immediately. That's what you've said that
Oh,
many
yes.
times over the years.
Yeah.
It's never too late. Wait, what'd you say? It's never too early or too late to consider and learn
Adoption.
about and make an adoption plan. Learning about it is not committing to it.
Right. And that's such an important point because many times, you know, that's what it feels like. It feels like asking is committing. It's not, it's simply exploring.
Hmm. And information helps you discover what your options are.
Mhm.
And that's very empowering. And you should get the information, seek it out, ask the questions, receive the information, and then make your decisions when you're ready.
And that's so important because, we cannot, especially as women, we cannot make educated decisions about a pregnancy, which, I mean, let's be real, you have three decisions, three options. No more, no less. There's only three. Every single one will change your life. The fact that you're pregnant has changed your life. No matter what you do, your life from this point forward is changed. But without accurate information about your choices, you can't make an educated decision. And honestly, Kim, I think that's one of the most heartbreaking things I have heard from women when I start talking to them about adoption because they've reached out for information and they say things like, you know, if I had known adoption was like this, I wouldn't have chosen to abort a previous pregnancy. And that's
Mhm.
just heartbreaking because what that says is no one was giving them accurate information on modern adoption. And that really is a gap, um, not just in our society, it's a gap in healthcare. But, you know, when you're answering those questions and you keep hearing the same question over and over and over, the gap becomes even more apparent. And that really is the question for women in regarding what adoption looks like today.
Mhm. And if you're considering adoption and you're just, Heather, I just think women feel ashamed for even
Hmm.
Googling it,
They do. They
for even saying it out loud or thinking the thought. They feel ashamed.
Yes. Yeah, because again, it gets back to the whole, well, if I'm Googling it, it means I don't love my baby.
I'm a bad mom. I'm
I'm bad
uncaring.
mom. Hmm.
I'm abandoning my child. And what kind of woman does that?
Hmm. And again, that really
But that's
stems,
not truth. I
no,
want to
it's
point
not
out
true.
that's
And
not
it
truth. Yeah.
stems from a lack of understanding about what modern adoption is because many people still think adoption is what it was decades ago, which I'm just going to say, even in the era of closed adoption, when that was done for different reasons, because single motherhood was considered shameful in the 50s. Those women didn't love their children any less. They were really given no choice. And it's astounding to me that so much of that history is still living today in people's minds that defines adoption, which is so not true. I mean, we literally live with the world in our hand when it comes to internet and access. And yet people still want to portray and believe about adoption like it was, 75 years ago. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love we do the podcast is because I think the more people talk about modern adoption, the more it's going to be out there. And then really I think that brings us to one of our next questions we hear a lot from women exploring adoption. And again, this is rooted in the 50s. And that question is, well, if I do adoption, will I ever see my child again?
And that is one of the biggest misconceptions about modern adoption, that you
Right,
won't.
right. Because women have this picture in their mind that honestly I don't know where it's come from except the 50s of, a baby being whisked out of a delivery room and never knowing what happens to that child again.
And the reality is most modern adoptions actually involve some level of openness and ongoing communication.
Hmm. And that openness, it looks different for every adoption relationship. Sometimes that involves updates through photos, letters, emails. Sometimes they text back and forth, video calls, phone calls, in-person visits. And I think it's good to know that this is set up before you ever sign your adoption consents. You have these conversations. You talk to the adoptive parents, you talk to your adoption professional. You can make agreements that everyone signs, but this openness, these aren't just concepts that Kim and I are talking about. This is real life in modern adoption and things that happen every single day.
Hmm. And, it's important to have these conversations with your adoption professional because sometimes women wonder about if if I'm staying in contact with the adoptive family and my birth child, is it going to cause something unstable for the child? Will
Hmm.
it be confusing? And it's not. Your adoption professional can also talk with you more about that, and perhaps that's a future episode that we can
Hmm.
talk on
Hmm.
more. But um, you know, I want to let you know that there's an ebb and flow to adoption communication, and there's also a personality to it. You get
Hmm.
to choose how frequently you want that contact. Some birth moms want more, some want less, and that is all totally fine. Most adoptive parents are willing to send updates. They're willing to meet up with you in person from time to time. And so you can map that out with them prior to the adoption, and there are some moments where you might want to take a break. Maybe you're going through a rough patch and things are really hectic in your life right now, and then you can come back and say, "Hey, can we resume our communication?"
Hmm.
So it's really something that is unique to you as the child's birth mom. And I think most adoptive parents have been educated that they want to maintain that communication with you for the sake of their child. And not only that, but especially Heather, you and I, we work at a Christian-based agency, Lifetime Adoption. And so we are really wanting to work with adoptive parents who have a compassion, love, respect, and appreciation for the choice a birth mother makes because the plan she makes is the answer to millions of their prayers.
Hmm. Absolutely. And and those, that's why I mentioned establishing those relationships prior to, if you're pregnant prior to the baby being born, because when you can start building a relationship with your child's parents, it starts to build a rapport
Mhm.
and that becomes more natural. And that's what we really, that's the goal, is that there's an authentic relationship there that is built to evolve over time, but has the guidelines of, being established ahead of time.
Mhm. And because open adoption isn't a one size fits all.
Definitely. Every
Yeah.
adoption relationship is going to be a little different. And as you said, it's going to ebb and flow. I think it's also important to know and acknowledge that open adoption is not co-parenting.
Yeah, that's something that I think concerns both sides.
Sure,
Adoptive parents
sure.
want to be mom and dad, and
Hmm.
birth mom wants to know, again, I'm not going to confuse my child. It's not going to be like my child bouncing around between families, like maybe in foster care scenarios. This is
Right.
private adoption. You're choosing adoption voluntarily, you're choosing parents, you're getting to know each other in as much or as little time as you have before the birth of the
Hmm.
child before you decide to make placement.
Hmm.
And you can choose to place at birth, or you can choose to parent and then choose adoption
A
after
little
trying to
later.
parent or a little
Yeah,
later. Yeah.
right. But yes, I like that you said that the adoptive parents are the child's parents.
Mhm.
And the birth mother is the birth mother. And the openness allows, first off, it allows the birth mother and the adoptive parents to really grow and develop their own connection and relationship with each other. And then as the child is getting older and getting a little more self-aware, building their identity, it really gives the child the opportunity to begin and maintain a connection to their story, to their identity. They know where they came from. They know their biological roots. They have someone to ask questions of when they have questions. And because adoptive parents are guided now to start telling their children their adoption story from the very beginning, this is all very natural and who they are, and there's no great shock when you're in third grade and your parents sit you down. It's part of who you are, so it's very normalized.
Yeah, I think that's good for you to understand that adoptive parents are sharing a loving story with their child from birth, a loving
Hmm.
story about you and the choice that you made out of love for them. And we use a term called tummy mommy, and that
Hmm.
prevents a lot of confusion. Adoptive parents can tell their child, "You have a tummy mommy that loved you so much. She couldn't take care of you and provide you with a life she wanted you to have. And so she chose us to be your mom and dad." And that was the answer to our prayers. And so, the term tummy mommy is very clear to children, even at a young age. If a child is being told this loving adoption story with you in it from birth, it's normal to them. And when they are 2, 3 years old, they know what a tummy mommy is.
Hmm.
Children know when they point at, a pregnant woman that there's a baby in there. That's
Hmm.
what we tell them. There's a baby in there. So they understand a tummy mommy.
Hmm.
And I think that term really helps. Positive adoption language is so, so powerful. Our words are so much more powerful than we really realize, I think.
I think for the birth moms, really the one of the greatest things they can see visually with their own eyes or through updates or through video chat when they see their child is not just okay, but growing happy, healthy, safely, in a stable home, and that they are welcomed and loved and part of that life. It really can bring so much comfort, so much peace, so much reassurance in their heart that they made the right decision.
And Heather, I want to also add that sometimes this feels a little counterintuitive for women on the
Hmm.
front end of planning adoption.
Hmm.
You and I have both had conversations with women who, at first, when learning they can have this kind of ongoing communication and receive updates, their first reaction is often, "That would be too hard.
Right.
I think that would hurt too much." But
Mhm.
they soon come to realize what a blessing it is to get to see the child that they made this plan for and the loving mom and dad, or even siblings if they chose a family with children already, and how much that child is accepted,
Mhm.
loved, cherished, and provided for just the way that she wanted. And the child's life is not an unknown. She actually gets to see the plan for her child living out through the years.
And I think sometimes it's a surprise to birth moms that they are so loved in this equation too. I
Mhm.
think that when they understand that, at least here at Lifetime, the families we work with are so excited to love and welcome you also, certainly to your comfort level, but that can often be a surprise. I think it's kind of automatic to assume, well, sure, they want to adopt, they want to welcome my child. But when you find out how much these adoptive parents care for the children's mother too, it really is, I don't know, surprising, I think
On
is one
both
of the
ends.
words. Exactly. Yeah.
Adoptive parents often feel surprised too because they are also coming into this wondering how this is going to work out. You're all
Hmm.
wondering what each other is going to be like
Right.
and are pleasantly surprised that this is a relationship that can develop over time gradually.
Hmm. Definitely. And sometimes people ask about boundaries.
Mhm.
What if? And definitely when we're talking and creating post-adoption contact agreements prior to, we talk about boundaries there as well. But the reality is most um, most parties enter into these agreements honestly, laying out the communication that they are ready to commit to with great respect, um, and really with realistic expectations on all sides. Uh,
Mhm.
but I think today that adoptive families truly and genuinely value this openness because they realize how much we have learned through the research, the studies, the years now, decades we've been doing open adoption. It's not a secret that these open biological connections and how they help shape a child's identity are invaluable. And so obviously they want that for their child too, for your child too. So they're very, very open to that. And just so you know, sometimes women come into adoption feeling like, yeah, I don't think I want any of that. That's great. But, just know when you're working with someone who only works with families who are open to open adoption, if you change your mind in the future, that those updates can still be arranged. It's just very important that no doors ever be slammed. It's okay to say, I don't know what I'm going to want right now. I don't want anything, just so that door can stay open because sometimes in the future we feel different.
Mhm. Absolutely. So we're just wanting you to really understand that modern adoption has changed so dramatically
hmm
from what people have known or heard about or think.
And I think we've talked a lot about open adoption and talking about adoptive parents. I think one of the other questions I have heard a lot, and sometimes women are a little scared to ask or don't know how to ask it, and that is, are adoptive parents safe? Are they going to
Mm,
provide a safe home? Are they okay people? Do you know who these people are? And I think that, especially in today's, environment, that is an absolutely fair question to
right.
ask or be curious about.
Absolutely. And that is a common thing on the list.
hmm
How can I verify that this is a family that's safe? And what investigation is done into them? And I just want to assure you that adoptive parents jump through a lot of hoops to prove who they are, that they don't have any history of any abuse of a child or any crimes that involved a child or that would endanger a child. They have to go through training, background checks, home inspection. A social worker goes to their home and looks in every room in their house. There's a lot to becoming approved legally to be an adoptive parent.
hmm And and I think some of these questions stem from maybe past trauma that women are carrying. Maybe they've had difficult experiences with relationships, um, unstable family situations or dynamics, um, or they've heard or seen things and somehow equate adoption with foster care, which it totally is not. Adoption is totally different than foster care. And adoptive parents are not the same as foster parents. So that trust, it doesn't come automatically. So if this is on your mind and you're considering adoption, by all means ask. Those are great questions. It's also a great reason to go with an adoption professional and not just, somebody that you're just you met. No, go with an adoption professional to ensure adoptive parents have all the screening they need.
And you should never be ashamed for asking questions like this. And that's why I think it's so good, Heather, that we're answering these questions
hmm
in a way that, someone who's researching this, she can click on this, she can start to listen to this conversation and be encouraged that questions are natural.
Hmm.
You should be asking questions, and you are entitled to having things explained to you.
Hmm.
You are entitled to grace and patience. Entitled to grace, that sounds weird, but you are.
Hmm.
You are making a big decision in your life and for this child. And so the questions that are on your mind, I promise you, you can't be the first person asking that and wondering that.
Hmm.
So, choose an adoption professional that is willing to take the time to help you understand the process and that doesn't rush you or make you feel any shame or question the fact that you're questioning something.
Hmm.
This is a plan that you're making for the future of your child, and you want to know that you did get all the questions answered. Some things might be unknown, but there are certainly processes in place, such as that investigation into adoptive parents that I talked about.
Hmm.
It's called their home study. It takes several weeks. It's like a 2-month process that adoptive parents go through to even get approved to receive a child through adoption.
And it's good to know that after they do bring a child home in adoption, in most states, they're required to have something called um, post, oh, Kim, it just escaped me.
Post placement.
Post-placement visits. And that's where the same home study, I mean, the same social worker will come back and visit with them 3 or 4 times and ensure everything is going well. And that also includes emotional safety. You know, Kim, you talked a lot about the background checks and interviews and home inspections, and there's also financial reviews, education requirements. Uh, they talk about how you plan on parenting, how you plan on disciplining a child. Are you emotionally prepared for this? So there really is a lot of oversight there. And I'm glad we talked about the home study process because I think women start to understand more when they're given this information and can see how um, with private adoption, these checks are very, very thorough.
Yes, and right now I'm just feeling like there's something we need to say about a woman understanding that she deserves to be respected throughout the process. And if you are asking about adoption for your baby or child, you deserve respect, honesty, patience, and space to make decisions without pressure. And I think that we have to say this because there's sort of a feeling that I'm choosing adoption for my baby, so I'm less than, and I shouldn't be
Mm.
asking for anything or asking anything. And that couldn't be further from the truth. You are choosing adoption for your baby if that ends up being your plan and choice. This child has been longed for, prayed for. Adoptive parents have poured out their hearts to God that a woman would come along and choose them for her child. You are not less than. You are a miracle and you are an answer to prayer. That's not a reason to choose adoption, but I just want you to know as a person, whether you choose to parent or you choose adoption, or if you end up having an abortion, you are valuable and loved by God, and your value has nothing to do with the choice you make.
I'm glad you said that, Kim, because it brings to mind another aspect of this, and that is when women are considering adoptive families. They may be looking, at families on a website or, hard copy profiles or something like that. And it can be very easy, I think, for a woman who's already carrying some of what you just said to feel intimidated or concerned that these people won't accept her or unsure if this is all real.
Yeah, especially because, if you've never met anyone like that in real life, it might be like, oh, well, this is just too good to be true. Look at this
Right.
cute house they have, and they both have their education, or they both have really stable jobs, and they have this great marriage, and they have this cute, adorable dog, and they have these cute memories and traditions and stories, and
Mm-hmm.
everything's beautiful. but that really could be their life. It doesn't mean that everything's perfect in their life, but, what you're seeing there is a polished profile. Adoptive parents, they put a lot of effort into the profile that you get to see. They want to make sure that you get to see their personality, learn their values, their lifestyle, and really know all the things about them that will help you be able to picture whether or not they could be the right mom and dad for your child. Social media is polished. There are so many, like even right now, our appearance is polished. Nobody woke up like this, right? If we're being honest, nobody woke up like this. But there's something more to it. Trust is something that develops through conversation and connection. You're not expected to choose a family just from the profile that you see or a video that you watch. You can then take it to the next step and actually have a one-on-one connection with the family, schedule a phone or video call. So that is something that will help you further discern or determine or feel all the feelings you're going to feel as to, do I feel at peace with this family?
Mhm. And really, I think that's something that we hear is how do I choose? And I love what you said, at peace with his family. Most women are trying to find adoptive parents who feel safe, stable, seem caring, seem genuine. And honestly, what I hear the most is that in learning about them, I just felt a connection. And that's why it is so important to not just decide from that, but have that next step of conversation. Even if you're totally unsure of your decision, that's okay. Because sometimes talking, get to knowing a little more about someone will help you decide, can I do this? Can I not do this?
hmm And when you have that opportunity to speak with adoptive parents or communicate with them on whatever level you feel comfortable, you can ask hard questions. Now, you might not have many questions, and that's fine too. Maybe your adoption professional gives you a list of sample questions that you can kind of riff off of, and
Mhm.
that is fine as well. But it's okay to ask the hard questions and be bold with that. Adoptive parents are expecting this. They know that you're choosing parents for your baby, and they know that is a big decision. And so you can ask things such as, how do you handle conflict? When you have a disagreement, how do you work it out? How will you talk about adoption, and will you respect me? How will you portray me to the child? Can you share with me how you plan to talk to your child about me? And when and if will you share with the child about the adoption story? At what age are you planning to share
Mhm.
that they were adopted, and that they have a whole story that was taking place before they came to your family?
Mhm. And, you know, that conversation isn't going to build a relationship, but it will start or it can start a relationship because like any friendship or anything else, those are often built slowly over time, even when you meet someone that has that, fast friend feeling. It takes some time.
hmm And, feeling not quite sure about something, feeling a little anxious about it, while still feeling hopeful about it and wanting to lean in and learn more about the family, that's all normal. It's
Oh,
normal for
definitely.
your feelings to be a total mixed up, I don't know what you want to call it, mixology of feelings, mixed
Right.
bag of emotions.
Because
Adoption does have so many. It's like
it
confetti, so many colors.
it really does. And I think at the heart of all of these questions that we talked about, it really gets back to where we started, and that is love. The heart of this is a woman trying to love her child enough to navigate what's the best decision for his or her life, and knowing that that is going to be one of the biggest emotional decisions of her own life.
So if you're listening today and you're exploring adoption as an option, we hope you know that it's okay to ask questions, and it's okay to ask hard questions. And there is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of in having these conversations or even just these thoughts.
It's also okay to feel conflicted, to feel unsure, to feel like you have absolutely no idea what's best. Most every woman I have ever spoken with adoption has shared all of those feelings. It's also okay to gather as much information as you need before you make a decision about your pregnancy and about your baby.
Right. And you deserve honest conversations, honest answers,
Mhm.
not rushed, not pressured. And you should never, you know, start to get this feeling that there's something you should feel guilty about in planning an adoption or asking questions, and that, an adoption professional shouldn't be putting stereotypes on you. You're just you, and you are in your situation right now, and you are making the best decision you can for yourself and your baby.
And I think as women learn more about modern adoption, they start to see that yes, it's complex, but it answers this emotional decision in a way that starts to give you as the mother ownership of your decisions, of your child's um, future, and really, I'm going to say, um, take responsibility for the decisions at every step of the process. And when we can make our own decisions, we're going to feel more confident in our outcomes because we had control. We could make the choice. And in adoption, you can make those choices. And certainly that starts with understanding your options so that you can make that informed decision for both you and your baby.
And I really, first of all, thank you for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Adoption, but I really hope and pray that this conversation and the things we've shared, that it's comforting for you, because that's really what you need. Right now, no matter what choice you make, you need comfort, you need encouragement, and you need to know that even though right now might feel dark, it's not forever. You will make a choice and you will make a plan, and life will be something where you feel light and love. You can feel God's love, and that's what we want you to feel through every conversation. We want you to know your identity in Christ, meaning God loves you and He has a plan for you, and that He does not want you to feel ashamed. That's not from Him. He doesn't want you to feel afraid. That's not from Him. So thank you for clicking in to this, tapping into it, if you will, to this conversation on Let's Talk Adoption.
If this episode encouraged you, if it answered questions, if it helped you better understand modern adoption, we'd love to hear from you. You can get in contact with us at our website, letstalkadoption.com. Also, please like, share, subscribe so you never miss a future episode. Thanks again for joining us today.